Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Boss Economics World, the only show where we take the world's economic dumpster fires, douse them in satire, and roast them over the flames of cold, hard data. I'm your host, the guy who's been yelling at the global economy since before TikTok economists were a thing, and today, oh boy, do we have a doozy for you. Grab your popcorn, your spreadsheets, and maybe a stress ball, because we're diving headfirst into the latest tariff tantrum from none other than Donald J. Trump, self-proclaimed dealmaker extraordinaire, and apparently, the guy who thinks international trade is just a giant game of Monopoly where he gets to slap a go to tariff jail card on 150 countries. Let's break this down, shall we? That's right, folks, Trump's latest economic masterstroke is to send out what I can only describe as the world's most passive-aggressive chain letter. Over 150 countries, mostly smaller nations that, in Trump's words, don't do that much business, are getting a nice little note in the mail saying, hey, guess what? Starting August 1st, 2025, you're getting slapped with a 10% or 15% tariff. Oh, and P.S., I haven't decided which yet, so, stay tuned. I mean, come on, this is less of a trade policy and more of a reality TV cliffhanger. Will it be 10%? Will it be 15%? Will Trump throw in a free MAGA hat with every tariff hike? Who knows? Now, let's get this straight. Trump's big plan is to treat these tariff letters like they're some kind of golden ticket to economic domination. He's even calling them deals, as if sending a country a bill for higher tariffs is the same as sitting down and negotiating a trade agreement. I mean, imagine if your boss sent you an email saying, hey, I'm cutting your salary by 15%, but don't worry, it's a deal. You'd be like, no, that's not how deals work, pal. But hey, in Trump's world, apparently, a deal is whatever he says it is. And if you're Canada, facing a whopping 35% tariff on some goods, well, tough luck, Trump's response is basically, too soon to say. Too soon to say. Buddy, the clock's ticking, and the global economy is sweating bullets. But wait, there's more. Trump's not just content with shaking down smaller countries, he's also got his sights set on the big dogs. The European Union, for example, thought they were close to striking a tentative deal with the US to avoid this tariff madness. But nope. Trump's like, nah, I'm indifferent to it. Indifferent. This guy's out here playing 4D chess with the global economy, except instead of a chessboard, it's a dartboard, and instead of strategy, he's just throwing darts blindfolded while yelling, art of the deal, baby. Now, let's talk about what this actually means, folks, because behind all the bluster and bravado, there's a real economic mess brewing here. First off, let's zoom in on the surface-level chaos. Financial markets hate uncertainty, and Trump's tariff roulette is giving Wall Street the jitters. Remember back in April 2025, when Trump first threatened these tariffs and then hit the pause button after markets went into a tailspin? Yeah, well, here we are again, except this time, the letters are in the mail, and the deadline is August 1st, 2025. According to Bloomberg, global equity markets have already seen a 3% dip in volatility-adjusted returns since the tariff letters were announced, and the VIX, the so-called fear index, spiked to 25, its highest level since early 2024. Translation: investors are freaking out, and your 401k is probably feeling the heat. But hey, it's not just Wall Street that's getting burned here. Let's zoom out to the bigger picture. The real victims of this tariff tantrum are the smaller countries Trump's targeting. These are nations that, by his own admission, don't do that much business with the US. But here's the kicker, while their trade with the US might be small potatoes in Trump's eyes, it's often a huge chunk of their own economies. Take a country like Bangladesh, for example. According to the World Bank, exports to the US account for nearly 20% of Bangladesh's total export revenue, much of it in textiles. A 10% or 15% tariff hike could wipe out profit margins for these exporters, leading to layoffs, factory closures, and a ripple effect that tanks local economies. And that's just one country. Multiply that by 150, and you've got a recipe for a global economic meltdown, all because Trump wanted to flex his tariff muscles. And here's where it gets really juicy, folks. Let's talk about the deeper economic issues this tariff spree exposes. First up, the fragility of global supply chains. We live in a world where your iPhone might be designed in California, assembled in China, and made with components from 40 different countries, many of them small nations that are now in Trump's tariff crosshairs. Slap a 10% or 15% tariff on those components, and suddenly, the cost of everything from electronics to clothing goes up. According to a 2024 report from the International Monetary Fund, a 10% across-the-board tariff increase could reduce global GDP by 0.8% within 2 years. That's not just a statistic, folks, that's jobs lost, businesses shuttered, and families struggling to make ends meet, all because of a policy that's more about political theater than economic strategy. Oh, and let's not forget about you, dear viewer, the American consumer. Because guess what? Tariffs aren't just a tax on foreign countries, they're a tax on you. When the cost of imports goes up, companies don't just eat the loss, they pass it on to consumers. Remember the US-China trade war of 2018 to 2019? A study by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York found that Trump's tariffs on Chinese goods cost US consumers and businesses an extra $40 billion a year in higher prices. Fast forward to 2025, and we're looking at a similar story, except this time, it's not just China, it's 150 countries. So, enjoy paying more for your clothes, your electronics, and heck, even your coffee, because those tariffs are coming home to roost. Now, let's zoom out even further, folks, because this tariff tantrum isn't just about higher prices or market jitters, it's a symptom of a much bigger economic tug-of-war. On one side, you've got protectionism, the idea that slapping tariffs on foreign goods will protect American jobs and industries. On the other side, you've got globalization, the idea that free trade and interconnected markets are the key to prosperity. Trump's betting big on protectionism, but here's the problem, the data doesn't back him up. According to a 2023 study by the Peterson Institute for International Economics, the U.S. tariffs imposed during Trump's first term saved about 142,000 manufacturing jobs. Sounds great, right? Except those jobs came at a cost of $900,000 per job, per year, in higher consumer prices and lost economic efficiency. That's right, folks, for every job saved, Americans paid nearly $1 million. If that's winning, I'd hate to see losing. And here's the kicker, tariffs don't even create that many jobs in the long run. Sure, you might prop up a few steel mills or textile factories, but what about the industries that rely on cheap imports to stay competitive? Take the U.S. auto industry, for example. A 2024 report from the Center for Automotive Research found that a 10% tariff on imported auto parts would lead to 30,000 job losses in the U.S. auto sector, as higher costs force manufacturers to cut production or raise prices. So, while Trump's busy handing out tariff trophies, the real winners are the countries that aren't playing his game, like China, which is quietly striking trade deals with the very nations Trump's alienating. That's right, folks, while Trump's busy whacking moles with his tariff hammer, China's out there playing the long game. Just look at the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, signed in 2020 and expanded in 2024 to include several of the smaller countries now facing Trump's tariffs. The RCEP is the world's largest free trade agreement, covering 30% of global GDP, and it's giving China a massive leg up in Asia-Pacific trade. Meanwhile, the US is isolating itself, alienating allies, and driving up costs for its own consumers. If this is America first, it's starting to look a lot like America alone. So, what's the takeaway here, folks? Trump's tariff tantrum is a masterclass in economic satire, a policy so absurd, so self-defeating, that it almost feels like performance art. But behind the laughs, there's a serious lesson. The global economy is a complex, interconnected web, and you can't just yank on one thread without unraveling the whole thing. From market volatility to higher consumer prices, from job losses to geopolitical isolation, the costs of this tariff spree are piling up faster than Trump's chain letters. And the worst part? It's all so predictable. We've seen this movie before, and spoiler alert, it doesn't end well. So, to all you financial pros out there, buckle up, because this tariff roller coaster is just getting started. And to all you everyday folks watching at home, well, better start saving now, because your grocery bill's about to get a whole lot spicier. Until next time, this is Boss Economics World, where we turn economic chaos into comedic gold. See you in the tariff trenches, folks.